everybody, welcome to another episode of Big Bang Wrestling. I'm your host, Marcus.
And I'm Nick.
All right, and we weren't able to do an episode last week or 2 weeks ago. Had a lot of stuff going on, as you can see. Got this mess behind me in the process of trying to move, so things been going busy with that and family issues. But nonetheless, we are back and ready to provide some more information and entertainment for the viewers. One thing we do want to talk about that happened just a couple days ago was the passing of Bobby Eaton. Me personally, I don't know a whole lot about him. I didn't watch him. Nick, I'm sure Nick can tell us a lot more about him.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's kind of a big deal. That guy really was one of the best pro wrestlers, heel, babyface, didn't matter. Overall, you weren't going to find too many people that were better than him. Yeah, a guy could do it all and had a very long career, obviously as part of the Midnight Express, one of the best tag teams of all time. And he wasn't that old either. He was only 62. It's kind of a weird thing. He had actually not too long ago, actually, about a month ago, his wife had passed away as well. And she was the daughter, of an old school promoter, wrestler, Bill Dundee. And, so he'd been dealing with that. And then I guess from what I understand, a couple weeks ago or within the week ago, he had fell and hurt himself, and he'd been in the hospital for a couple of days. They'd gotten him straight, everything to go home. And like his daughter, she was setting up to come live with him, help him out and everything. And then, Wednesday night, he passed away.
Damn. I know he impacted a lot of the current generation, the wrestlers and the performers. He impacted a lot of them, and they all had some type of interaction with him. Whether it was taking advice, training, or just even giving advice with the matches and whatnot. He impacted a lot of these people in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, one thing they used to say about him, which is a pretty big compliment everybody used to give him, is they'd always say that he was your favorite wrestler's favorite wrestler.
I have heard that before, too.
Yep. A lot of people used to say that about him.
And how long did he wrestle for?
Oh, shoot, it was good 30 years or so at least.
Yeah, one of them long careers then.
Yeah, because he was part of the early Midnight Express, in like 82, 83, he was part of that, and he was the only constant member of the Midnight Express. Yeah, and he had runs in WCW in the mid 90s, early 90s. He teamed with William Regal, guys like that in WCW, and he pretty much worked with everybody, every major company, every major, champion, all that. He's done it all,
Another thing I want to talk about that's kind of been coming up in conversation now that might be a very big possibility even for SummerSlam, being advertised for Las Vegas and especially having this big show, but now there's talk that they might be going back to the Thunderdome.
Yeah, from what I've seen, I guess right now they're still going to let SummerSlam happen the way that it is, but after that, they're not sure.
Yeah, because I know, one of the things I was reading online was they're going ahead as scheduled with SummerSlam in Vegas, but they are preparing in case it does get canked. They got to move it to the Thunderdome, and that's what they're going to do. It's a very high possibility either way right now.
Yeah.
And that's with the rise of COVID cases and this new variant and all that stuff. It's a very real possibility that live, fans in attendance will not be continuing after SummerSlam.
Yeah,
it's a very real possibility. So that little month break out of the Thunderdome.
Yeah, maybe.
think they had a total of about a month outside the Thunderdome, and you notice the quality of the shows had gotten better once they got out to Thunderdome and they had live fans.
Oh yeah, it's a whole different atmosphere when you're in front of people versus you're just sitting in a back room in front of a screen, you know.
Pressing noise for crowd reactions.
Yeah, exactly. Or having your, having your trainees sit around the ring.
Mm-hmm. But hopefully we don't see it go back to the Thunderdome. But as the way it's looking right now, it's a very real possibility.
Yeah. It's not looking too good for the rest of the upcoming shows.
And speaking of things not looking good for upcoming shows, did you see what Cena said about the current state of WWE?
Oh yeah, and he said the same thing everybody else is saying. There's no new stars. There's no new people. You know, he's the last one. You think about it.
Yeah,
he is the last superstar of anybody, not just WWE, but of anybody. He is the last major star.
That's it.
Of pro wrestling. Period.
You know, he even said
there hasn't been anybody since him.
And he even said when you start relying on guys like Goldberg, Undertaker, Edge, and even himself, that makes the future of the company very unstable because you're not building anybody new. Mm-hmm. The only major guy that they really have that they're building is Roman Reigns and Bobby Lashley.
Mm-hmm.
Those are your big two right now.
Well, and Bobby Lashley's older than Cena. And I mean, Roman Reigns, not saying there's anything wrong with Reigns, but you can't do it all with just one person.
No, you can't. Even though Roman Reigns has been, I'd say he's been carrying SmackDown through the Thunderdome time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, SmackDown's
been the better show, but
he's been the highlight of that show. You know,
mm-hmm.
But
you know, even Hogan had dance partners. He didn't do it by himself.
I don't think he could do it by himself because he was good on the mic, but his wrestling was well below par.
He wrestled the way McMahon wanted him to wrestle. Hogan actually did know how to wrestle. You just weren't going to see it there.
Yeah, I guess.
But like I said, he had dance partners. There were other stars. There were other guys there to put him up against. You know, it wasn't just him.
Yeah.
You still had Roddy Piper. You had, like I said, Roddy Piper.
Randy Savage.
Randy Savage, Paul Orndorff, Big
Jake
Boss
Roberts.
Man, Andre the Giant. You still had all these other people.
But they're bringing back all these older guys, and then they're paying them so much money now that they're having to release people to pay these guys.
Well, I don't think that's the only reason they're releasing people, but that definitely doesn't help.
I would think that's a big reason that they're releasing these people. No, not at all. I mean, just this month alone, they released within the last 30 days, I'm going to go further than that. The last 60 days, in the last 2 months, they released well over 30 people.
Oh, yeah.
Because look, they released all of 205 Live.
Mm-hmm.
They released almost all of NXT.
Well, the ones they've released out of NXT, or the majority of the ones they've released out of NXT, are guys that haven't even been on TV yet.
Diamond Mine, that's pretty much done.
I said the majority, you know.
And a lot of these guys
here and there, but
a lot of these guys they released are also like the people they were going to use to expand NXT in other countries.
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of dead, but they released some of the more notable guys they released from NXT, were Leon Ruff, former North American champion. They
You had
released
like
Bobby Fish.
and
They released Mercedes Martinez, who just challenged for the NXT Women's Championship. They released Bronson Reed, who was just the North American champion.
Yeah.
And they released, what's the guy's name? Tyler Rust, who is in this highly teased diamond mine. So what's going on with that? Is that dead now, or are they going to bring somebody else? And they released they released a bunch of people. But the message that I saw that they want to do with NXT is they truly want to make it a developmental brand now.
Well, yeah, they want to revert it back to what it was.
They don't want anybody over the age of 30 in NXT, from what I saw. So now that leaves the question, what's going to happen with Gargano, Ciampa, Samoa Joe? Yeah. Timothy Thatcher, he looks like he's damn near 40.
But we'll see the original NXT when they've converted it over from FCW, that was all developmental stuff.
Yeah.
That's truly what it was. They got guys that were new to the WWE. They may not have been new to wrestling, but they were new to the company. And they taught them the WWE style in NXT, and that's what they did until they thought they were ready to bring them to the main roster. And that's where most of the, that's where Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, he was there too.
Sami Zayn, Finn Balor.
Sami Zayn, all of, the New Day.
Yeah.
Well, Finn Balor was in the transition period where NXT had became its third brand. Yeah. Balor wasn't in the original version of NXT, but Rollins, Reigns, those guys, because they all came from FCW. Yeah, there's another one, Wyatt. They were part of that actual developmental.
Yeah. So I mean, do you think a move like that is going to do more to help or hurt WWE?
Well, if they run it like they did before, it will help, because that's where a lot of the top guys have come from now. If you just leave who's in charge of it, I think it'll be fine. But there's no telling at this point.
Yeah, because they gotta use NXT to develop new stars, because what they're doing right now isn't working. And I saw another statement online where they said WWE is past that stage where they're doing all this talent hoarding. They're hoarding all this talent just to have them sit on the bench, so nobody else will get them, basically.
Yeah.
And I guess they feel like there's really no competition right now in pro wrestling. That's why they're releasing all this people. According to Vince McMahon, is what he said.
Part of it. Well, you think about this too for a second. They've made more money during COVID than they ever have in any time. Now think about that.
But that's also, there's a lot of things that can go into that too.
Well, hold on, let me finish.
Yeah, go ahead.
But just think about that for a second. They've made more money during COVID than they ever have, even during their most profitable period between 98 and 2001. But they're selling off stocks. They're getting rid of all these people. They're planning for something big, whatever that may be. They're planning for something, because all of this isn't just done for shits and giggles.
No.
They're not. It's not just because Vince I don't like this person, I don't want them. That's not what this is right now. This is something totally different.
And you want to know what the crazy part is? I want to stop you right there for a minute, right?
Yeah.
Because you just said Vince. Here's the funny thing with these NXT releases, Triple H and Shawn Michaels aren't really having any say in it.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. It's nothing to do with them. It's
Vince,
Pritchard, and
John Laurinaitis, and there was somebody else, and it wasn't Nick Khan. Pritchard, that's who it was.
It's Pritchard, Laurinaitis, and Vince. That's the ones that are going through all this right now.
But then I've also been hearing that all the main roster releases have been involving Nick Khan too.
Yeah.
And then there was a rumor that I think you had mentioned it to me the other day, was that Nick Khan was really brought in to prepare WWE to sell.
Yeah, that's the rumor. Don't know how true it is. It obviously doesn't look too far from the truth at the moment, but
because that rumor that WWE was going to be selling for a while has been going on for a while,
yeah,
for years, for years.
I've been talking about the last couple of years, but think about this for a second. And I had this conversation with somebody else earlier. The only people they could sell to would be like fucking Disney or Universal or something like that. A major company, like, because think about it, we already know that they've pretty much been transferring everything to Florida.
Yeah.
So think about this: if they sell to Disney or they sell to Universal, then that gives them an opportunity to have this huge part of all these theme parks and all these other places, which in Vince's mind, he would love that. That's something he fucking wants. Yeah. And they've been talking about building a physical Hall of Fame also. So all this could all be tying into something like that,
And at one time, many, many years ago, it's been well over 10 years, they've been talking about wanting to build a WWE themed theme park.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. If you sell to one of these people like that,
Well, it's crazy to think, because I'm sorry, I don't see Disney being able to take that product and make it something profitable to the audience they're trying to project to.
Disney doesn't have to. They just want the name.
You think we're about to see the end of WWE as
I don't know. It's interesting because I can't see Vince being the one to get rid of it, just because the legacy, and he's big on shit like that.
I mean, it's definitely interesting to think about, and all the different possibilities they got.
Yeah.
And
I mean, this company goes all the way back to the Capital Wrestling Corporation from the 1940s. From his granddad. It started with his granddad's company, and now, obviously, it's a whole different animal now than it was almost 100 years ago. But
because Vince McMahon did exactly what he said he wouldn't do, before his father passed away.
Well, he did a lot of things he's told his dad he wouldn't do.
And did it anyways.
He did a lot of things. He fucked up the territory. He's the one responsible for killing the territories.
Yeah.
That's him. He did that. He went into other people's territories, which is something you weren't supposed to do. He raided those talents 40 years ago, 30 years ago. He's pretty much done everything in pro wrestling that back in the day that you were not supposed to, that would have gotten you kicked out of wrestling. He's done all of it. He told everybody it was scripted. He told everybody it was worked. He raided all these companies, bought all these companies, And
the lines between, like you said, telling it's a work and everything, the lines between reality and kayfabe are very blurred right now.
Well, it doesn't exist, and it hasn't existed in over 20 years.
But it's weird, like you go on social media.
But what I find,
you go on social media, which is a whole nother conversation. But I'm just saying, you go on social media, and they're still trying to keep kayfabe going.
And that's what kills me with it.
But then you watch the documentaries and everything, they tell you it's a work.
Well, then look at this too, though. You just brought up social media. You got all these pro wrestlers that are on social media. None of them use their gimmick names. They all go by their real name.
A lot of them, yeah.
None of it's they're not trying to keep any sort of, what's the word? They're not trying to keep any sort of, illusion to anything that, this is still what it's supposed to be, because it's not.
Yeah, then you got the guys and I'm gonna bring up AEW for a minute, right? While we're talking about kayfabe and the lines being blurred. I will say this about those guys in AEW, though. Yeah, they do blur the lines a lot, but some of the best ones, like with, I guess, with like the Young Bucks, Cody Rhodes, all them, they're really trying to break down that fourth wall in wrestling by mentioning these other guys and companies specifically.
Yeah.
They've been mentioning the New Day, and they've been mentioning Jeff Hardy a lot.
Yeah, which also is a big no-no from the old,
Yeah, you don't mention people from other companies.
You don't talk about that. They, as far as you're concerned, they don't exist. The only thing you've got is what's right here.
Yeah, Vince McMahon, WWE, they've been doing that a little bit here lately, but not really as often as AEW or Impact or those guys have been, because they got that partnership going on. So they're openly acknowledging Impact, Ring of Honor, AEW, New Japan, MLW, AAA. They're mentioning all of that. I do want to go back to the networks and Disney and all that we were talking about. The most controversial release that happened out of all of these was Bray Wyatt.
Yeah, and I think the reason his was controversial, not so much that it happened, is because nobody can agree on why it happened.
Yeah. But
you got one group that says, okay, he was fired. What we do know for a fact at this point that he was not fired. But you also have this other side, and I've seen this from a few more reliable people, but still it's just speculation. Because even Mick Foley said this himself, is that he wanted to leave because he needed to take care of some things for himself.
I know he had some health issues.
Yeah.
Besides the mental health issues from Brody Lee, John Hoover passing away, he also had some prolonged health issues he was trying to deal with. But he was cleared to compete several days before his release.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, especially within WWE, were highly upset, visibly upset about his release, because he was one of the greatest creative minds as a performer that they had backstage.
And like I said, and that's what tells me that he wasn't fired. That sounds to me more like they came to an agreement,
Yeah.
That's just because the fact he was medically cleared, and then that all happened within the same week. That tells me. And here's another thing, though, he hasn't spoke about it either.
He hasn't.
Which, like I said, that makes me think, okay, well, this isn't just some random thing. This is something that they all agreed on,
And then, they're claiming that all these releases are due to budget cuts. They're releasing pretty much they released a whole brand. All those guys that they released, you released an entire brand.
Yeah.
And they're claiming it's the budget cuts, but they hired 4 guys that equals the total sum of what that whole brand was paid for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then here's the better part. Adam Cole had a high-profile meeting with Vince McMahon just before SmackDown. This man, they claim he was making $100,000 a year, no salary, right?
Yeah.
Now there's reports of him signing a contract with WWE saying he's making $1 million a year.
Yeah, he wasn't making $1 million. I can tell you that right now.
No, now they said he got offered a contract.
Or they're talking about his new contract. Okay,
he got offered $1 million a year, and that doesn't make sense because you notice they're releasing all of these guys who got these high dollar contracts.
Yeah,
they just gave him a high dollar contract. When they go to make these next budget cuts, who do you think is going to be at the top of the list?
Well, and here's the thing. Some of these people that have high dollar contracts probably weren't worth the amount of money they were getting. Let's just be honest right now.
That's true.
not everybody getting those high paying contracts is really worth that money at the end of the day.
Let's look at Braun Strowman. Let's take some of these high dollar contracts. Braun Strowman being the first one comes to mind. He was getting like $1 million, $2 million a year.
He was over
but he wasn't worth that much.
No.
He was a great in-ring performer. I'm not taking away from that. But I don't think he's in that bracket to where he's worth $1 million to $2 million a year.
No, he wasn't worth $1.5 million or whatever it was they were giving him. That's one of them, and that's one of the ones I was referring to. Yes, he had a high dollar contract, but he wasn't necessarily worth that either.
Yeah, Bray Wyatt, he was making about the same. About $1 million a year, I believe.
Yep, they were.
But he was one of the ones that was worth that money.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, with him, his case, I think is a little bit different than everybody else's. His isn't, we're spending too much money on this guy. I think his is one of the few that is its own separate. Than like with Ric Flair asking for his release there. Yeah, again, I think that's another one that's totally separate. That has nothing to do.
That was a mutual agreement because Ric Flair requested for his release.
Yeah,
but my thing
he was on a Legends contract. Mm-hmm. He's not an active competitor. He's not an employee or anything like that. They're giving him money because of who he was, basically.
I know they say he had a lot of disagreements with Vince about how Charlotte was being booked.
Well, that part I kind of go back and forth on, but
because the Lacey Evans storyline was a total failure.
Yeah,
and they had a lot of issues with that.
But let's be honest, that Lacey Evans angle is some shit that Flair would have came up with on his own, most likely anyway.
No, they said from the reports I was reading, they said Flair didn't like it.
I'm just saying, look at what he's done in the past. That's something that I would not put past him to come up with.
Hey, he's a changed man.
5 wives later and paying more money in alimony than most people ever make in their life.
I'll be honest with you, and I say this in all seriousness, I could very well see him going to AEW. Hear me out there, right? Because Andrade has been pushing for him and Charlotte to go to AEW.
Yeah, I know.
He's saying he wants some of his family to come to AEW. So you're looking at Bandito, you're looking at Roosh, you're looking at who was the other guy? It was another guy that was mentioned.
But what's there for Charlotte to do in AEW? She has one match. The only person that would even be viable, that would even make sense for her to face, is Britt Baker. Outside of that, who does she have?
I'll tell you one match I would like to see. Charlotte and Hikaru Shida.
Well, I'm not talking about, just something me or you would like to see or something like that. I mean, an actual, viable, feud program.
I'd say Hikaru Shida, and I'd say Thunder Rosa.
But,
Jade Cargill could be another one.
Yeah. Lady Shelton Benjamin.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, those are the main ones I could see her feuding with and putting on decent feuds with,
But no, I guess. But I'm just saying, realistically.
But that's it.
Yeah, there's nothing for her.
Yeah. I don't know.
And I'll be honest, I was really shocked that Andrade even went there, just for the simple fact of the history that he has everywhere else.
Mm-hmm. But Vince doesn't view AEW as competition. He said, I don't view them as I did with WCW.
Well, it's not.
Have you looked at their roster?
It's not the same thing, though.
Their roster is basically WCW.
I said it's not, and that's what I'm saying. No, it's not the same. When you really look at it, it's not the same. It's not the same climate. It's not the same. It's not the same things going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same TV channel. That's about all you got out of it.
A lot of them, it's the same people that was on WCW 20 years ago.
That's the people, mostly the ones backstage. Yeah, there's a few of them that still get on TV.
There's a lot of them.
but well, they're all old. I don't really count. So,
Oh, you got Chris Jericho. He's still doing his thing.
now, if Brock Lesnar or John Cena or somebody like that shows up on AEW, okay, well then you've done something to really,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Then you've actually, okay, then that starts to look more like 96 when Hall and Nash said, fuck it. And
But AEW, basically, it's already common knowledge. They already got Punk and Daniel Bryan.
that's Brian. Yes, that is 100%.
They said Punk is confirmed now.
I'm still slightly on the fence with Punk because in the back of my head, I just see Punk being a guy to troll everybody.
They say
saying he's not.
Look, like from what I heard, Punk is confirmed for AEW, and he's coming around about All Out Weekend. But then also, I heard he's AEW has already been granted permission to use Cult of Personality by the band. So you got that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's looking like it's pretty confirmed with those two. Then you got Braun Strowman. They don't know where he's going. You got Bray Wyatt. They don't know where he's going. Ruby Riott supposedly signing with AEW.
I guess she's been talking with them recently or something like that.
Because a big person backstage that's pushing for her is Vicky Guerrero. She's really pushing for Ruby Riott.
Yeah, I saw that she's been talking about her, asking about it, and
AEW's got a lot of talent on their roster with a lot of these signings, but they're not going to be able to use them all.
No, and that's where they're falling into a big problem.
And that's the same thing WWE did.
And it's the same thing WCW did also. You have way too many people that you have spots for.
Unless you make Rampage into a separate show with totally separate people.
Which is not always a guarantee, No,
but that does almost give people more. Like when we saw the brand split with WWE, right?
Yeah.
You started seeing more guys get TV time of, you got Mojo Rawley on TV more. You had Jinder Mahal.
Yeah.
Jinder Mahal is probably the biggest name that came out of that brand split.
But in that case of the brand split, as though you already had two well-established shows. You had two well-established brands that were recognizable to anybody that knows this, that knows this sport, knows this genre. That's part of why that worked, because we already knew what these things were.
Yeah.
And yes, there were some guys that got big that probably never would have without it. There's like Rey Mysterio, Edge, guys like that.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for SmackDown, they would have probably never got as high as they did.
Yeah. Batista too.
Mm-hmm.
Like Batista started getting big on Raw, but he really didn't get that monster push until they put him on SmackDown.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he was the top guy on SmackDown.
Mm-hmm. And you think about it, that mid-2000 SmackDown period, like I said, you had Ray, you had Edge, you had these guys that everybody
Batista,
knew.
Undertaker, Kennedy.
Do these things, but we'll see. Undertaker was one of the guys that was there. He was the proven veteran. He was the guy there to help those guys.
He was the locker room leader.
Yeah. So a guy like I said, they did it perfectly there because you had 5 or 6 guys that were all that were been around for a little bit, but were still fairly new. So they still had time. So you had those 5 or 6 guys you could get behind that all came up together, and they did. They all became main eventers at the same time. But then you still had the established guys like Undertaker, like the other guys that would come up, like Guerrero's and all of them that would come through there. You still had that. They weren't solely relying on those made guys already.
Yeah. like with all the talent AEW is getting, I said to really give those all of them people TV time that they're paying this money for, they're gonna have to put a separate brand on, or either do like what some other smaller companies are doing, and rotate them like every other week.
Or they're going to have to do what other big companies did in the past: is get rid of the guys you don't need.
Yeah,
they're going to have to do something, because they're not going to last just by basically talent hoarding.
basically, yeah.
But it's funny because with AEW, it's just like, it seems like now every time you see a wrestler get out of their contract, whether it's WWE, Ring of Honor, whoever, a week later, where are they?
They're all elite.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't blame them for signing these guys, though. At the same time,
no,
I don't fault them at all.
But it's too much at once.
Mm-hmm. I did like the fact that they signed Chavo. I did like that.
But I'm saying, they don't even have spots for what they already have.
Yeah.
And they're just steadily adding more, which is what WCW did, and we know how that ended within a couple of years.
Yeah. But I want to go back to WWE with all these releases, right? Mm-hmm. I kind of want to backtrack a little bit.
Yeah.
As we know, 2K22 is coming out next?
I guess
in October. I think September, late September, early October.
Mm-hmm.
They just released over 30-some guys. Who's going to be on the game? Are we going to go back to the old SmackDown games were years ago, like No Mercy, where you only had 16 people on the whole damn game?
Well, you got to think about it. All these people have already signed their likeness to this game well before this happened. So they're
we're going to see 4 different versions of Triple H again.
Screw it. We could could be like Fire Pro, where you have one roster was the actual people and everything else was just made up to look almost just like those people. But
I'm just saying, I don't see how this is supposed to be a big roster, right? They just released over half their damn roster. And I was trying to figure out who's going to be on the game, because they released some of the biggest names. Bray Wyatt, I don't know if he's going to make the cut. Strowman, I don't think.
Like I said, a lot of these people that have been released, like I said, a lot of them have probably already had an agreement to be in this game to start with. That doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Their likeness is still there. They still get paid for it, whether they're there or not.
The interesting take I have on that, what you just said, is what about the guys who already signed with AEW and been on television? Like Rusev, like Aleister Black, Andrade, Ruby Riott, who's supposed to be coming on shortly, Daniel Bryan's another one. What about those guys who have already appeared on television for another company?
I mean, Chris Jericho.
Are they taking him out of the game? Those guys out of the game, or are they going to leave them in and, like I said, pay them for their likeness? Or
like I said, I doubt it. Look at this: the game for Nintendo 64, WrestleMania 2000.
Right.
That came out in 1999.
Okay.
Chris Jericho appeared in that game months before he ever actually appeared on Raw. He was still in WCW when that game came out. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, within a couple of months of the game coming out, all of a sudden here's Jericho on Raw, and he was in the game.
Interesting.
So it's not the first time,
So aside from all the different game modes and the somewhat hype for this game, because everybody's just hoping it's better than 20 was, because 20 was an absolute dumpster fire. Yeah. But aside from all of that, my biggest question is who's going to be on the game. That's my biggest question right now.
Though, unless they go back and start plucking guys throughout time, like they did with 14 and 17, and Which, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that because a lot of people don't know who these people were. It's a good way to introduce somebody to past, wrestling. That's how I've learned about some of these guys. Never saw them, but then you see them in the game, and then you're like, oh, well, let me go check this person out, see what they did.
I'm guilty of that too. Like, I'll see them on the games, like, who's this guy? And I'll go look him up.
Yeah. So they could do some stuff like that.
And that's fine. I have no issue with that. My issue is I don't want to see 4 versions of John Cena, 16 versions of Daniel Bryan. I don't want to see all that.
And that's the thing. You'll end up with prototype John Cena. Then you'll get, heel rap John Cena.
Actually, I would like to see that in the game. I would like to see that.
But you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm getting at, though.
And I don't want to see.
You'll get Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Then you'll get 98 DX Triple H. Then you'll get the early game Triple H, and then or you'll get Stunning Steve Austin, and you'll get the Ringmaster Steve Austin, then Stone Cold Steve Austin,
and I want to talk about something else. They're talking about all these characters they had in the last game, right? Who the fuck is Baron Blade, El Mago, Nick Quinn, or whatever the fuck, Cole Quinn? Who the fuck are these guys?
Well, those are characters made up for the career.
And Ribby, what the fuck? I don't want to see people like that in the game. Yeah, it's cool. It's fine, whatever, for the story mode. But as legitimate playable characters, we don't need that.
Hey, I liked El Mago, okay?
They're like Hispanic version of Abyss.
No, he was the promoter. Remember, that was the promoter's wrestling gimmick.
I ain't gonna lie to you. I got bored with the story mode, so I just said to hell with it.
That's as far as I got. That's as far as I got. That I found out El Mago and the promoter were the same guy.
But anyways, enough of ranting about the video game. We're going to see that. We're going to see that's either going to be hit or miss. I don't know. The trailer looks pretty good, though.
They're being quiet about it.
They are. That's the part that's kind of catching me.
Yeah. So we'll see. Okay, there's one thing we can get out the way right now. There's never going to be wrestling games like those Nintendo 64 ones. No. I don't care. I don't care what anybody says. That series from WCW, those 2 games, to the 2 WWF games, and then the 2 Japanese games, there have never been wrestling games before or since that match that.
You remember it was an old game. It was an old wrestling game, except it was kind of based off like a Mario Kart type concept. You know which one I'm talking about?
Wasn't it that Crush Hour or whatever?
Yeah. That was fun. That was fun. That came out for the GameCube and
yeah, it was like PS2 and shit.
It was fun. I love playing that.
But I'm just throwing that out there now. None of them, no matter how good they are going to be as good as those were.
Nah, I don't think so either. But I mean, they're trying to aim for like that more realistic look instead of like.
Well, and that's where they've had an issue is that yes, they want the realism, but the gameplay has never been able to match that.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to do. And it's the same thing with boxing games, MMA games, stuff like that. You can make it look as real as you want to, but getting the feeling of actual real combat, real wrestling, that's the hard part.
Yeah.
And it's very rarely has it ever come close to, meeting that.
19 wasn't bad.
No, 19 was like, but you still have that feeling, okay, I'm just playing a simulation. Yes, it looks good.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't quite have the feeling.
No, like when you play 20, you run somebody into the ropes and they're bent all like through the middle and the second rope or top rope. And
it is all kind of,
that was
just a mess.
20 never existed. We don't talk about that no more.
Yeah, well, there's a few WWE games that we don't talk about.
I'd say my favorite one though is probably Here Comes the Pain.
Oh yeah, that one was great, but you know why that one was great? Because they didn't try to go full blown realism. They were like, okay, we're gonna make a fun wrestling game.
It was real enough to where you can enjoy it, but the quality was good.
Right. They still did like, throwing people out of helicopters and stuff. And
yeah.
And then the fact that Goldberg and Brock Lesnar were so overpowered in that game, holy shit.
Jesus. Kind of like Brock Lesnar in 2K19.
Nah, that ain't nothing like Here Comes the Pain. You could do 3 moves and win an entire match in that game with him or Goldberg.
You remember the old slobber knocker matches?
Oh yeah. You just fight till somebody dies and
you just knock them up, knock them out, and here comes the next one. Yeah. Dude, I used to love playing those. See how many people you can knock out. But
it's like the Japanese version of it was Virtual Pro Wrestling. I think it was number 2, had an unlimited battle royal. Yeah, it's just 4 guys in the ring. It's just 4 guys in the ring. They just keep sending people. It's just nonstop. You just go until you get eliminated. Once you're eliminated, it's done.
But what happens when you go through the entire roster?
They just keep going. Just keeps repeating until you're eliminated. And it doesn't end until you get eliminated.
Jesus. Anyways, let's go to our moments and flops of the week, because we had some interesting moments that came through wrestling this week and some big flops.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you what my biggest flop was of this last couple weeks. And that was seeing Goldberg being officially announced for another world title match.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I'm getting tired of seeing him put in title matches. He'll come back after being gone for 6-7 months. The next thing he's main event in the pay-per-view.
Yep.
I would like to see him in a feud. I don't mind seeing him wrestle on there. But I'd like to see him in a feud as not for a world title.
Well, he did one. The one was Ziggler, then that was it.
Does that count?
Not really, but I'm saying that's it. That's all they did. That's the only one he's done. It wasn't.
Those are the feuds I'd like to see him in. Something that's not for that world title, because I much rather would have seen anybody else go, except for Drew McIntyre. I'd like to see anybody else go against Lashley.
Yeah. That whole Lashley and McIntyre thing got old quick.
But here's the other problem they run into. Who's on Raw that can go against Lashley now?
Well, that's the thing. That's what we were just talking about. There's nobody left.
They haven't built, like we said, they haven't built anybody.
Lashley is 46. So think about this for a second. Goldberg's only 8 years older than him. And that's your top feud right now.
I know a lot of people are saying we would have liked to seen Lesnar and Lashley.
Yeah, and that was one that everybody's wanted to see for about 10, 15 years now. But
I don't think we'll ever see Lashley. I don't think we'll see Lesnar back in WWE no time soon, because he supposedly signed with somebody.
Well, yeah, they claim he signed with another company, but they expressly stated that it was not the top 2.
Yeah. So
they specifically said it was not WWE and it was not AEW, but that he has signed a contract with somebody else.
What is it, MMA though, or did he sign with pro wrestling?
It looked like pro wrestling. I doubt he's ever going to fight again just because of the stomach issues he had.
Who has enough money to pay him?
New Japan. That's the only other company that
I don't see him going back to New Japan though and keeping up with their style.
And that's the only other company he's ever worked for is New Japan.
So that's going to be very interesting. But
that's
going
the only
back
one
to
I can think of. That's the only one I can think of. I mean, nothing wrong with Ring of Honor or MLW or people like that, because they're good. They're good companies for what they are, but they're not big enough for somebody like that.
Yeah. Going back to, like I said, looking at the roster, to me, it's almost like the rosters are lopsided. Because you got all this star power on SmackDown. Yep. They were teasing Finn Balor and Roman Reigns, which I would love to see.
Yeah, I'd have much rather had that than what we're getting.
But I'll tell you what they could have done with Cena. They put him on Raw to face Lashley.
But I understand what they're doing with Cena, and it makes sense. Yeah, you get your biggest star and you use him to put over your new star. I get it.
But we've already had that.
They've done forever. But I'm saying, it's what they've done forever. You know, it's just
Cena didn't beat him last time. They've already done the whole passing of the torch thing.
But with Roman now being a heel, firmly being a heel, and not being, not trying to be Cena 2.0 like they did last time.
Yeah.
It's a different situation. It's not the same.
It is, but it isn't.
Said it's not the same. Yes, it's the same people, but it's not the same story. The same feud.
They need to do something on Raw because they got Keith Lee, but they haven't done anything with him. You got Jeff Hardy. You got people like that, and they're not utilizing. Instead, I don't know what the hell they're doing. They got Karrion Kross. What are they doing with him? What's the end goal for that?
Well, here's the thing, though, too. Is he gonna lose to Joe? Which, I mean, I wouldn't be mad if he did, but
I wouldn't be surprised if he did.
But that's another thing. Which, hey, don't get me wrong, that's a great fucking match. But
oh yeah, I don't see what the end goal is here for Raw.
No, I mean, the SmackDown's firmly been the better show for a while now.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
just hands down, no questions.
But, again, that was my flop for this week. It's just I'm tired of seeing Goldberg in title matches. Well, I want to see somebody newer.
Well, what was your moment for this period that we're in right now?
Honestly, my top moment for this week was the debut of Malachi Black.
Mm-hmm.
They did that almost perfectly.
Well, which debut? His company debut or his in-ring debut?
Almost like the whole thing altogether, but his in-ring debut is probably the best. Right. Because you noticed for the past couple weeks, everything Cody Rhodes has been trying to do, he shut down.
Yeah.
He's like, nah, we ain't doing this again.
Yeah.
I love it. And his debut, even Tommy End himself said, that's what he wanted to do in WWE.
Mm-hmm.
And it looked good when he did it.
And that's something that's missing from all wrestling. I mean, MLW does it with guys like Jacob Fatu sometimes, but squash matches, people have forgotten how much when a squash is done right, it can get somebody over.
Yeah. If you're going to do them right.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to be one of these top guys in AEW soon.
He could be. Yeah, he could be.
He needs to be. Even if it's just for the TNT title, he's going to be a champion.
And I don't know if you saw it. This is just kind of a side note, but there was a thing that happened at an indie show also in this same time period where him and Brody King.
Yeah, I saw that.
Reunited.
Brody King pretty much told Malachi now that wherever you go, I'm going.
See, and that's interesting now because Brody King has his own faction in Ring of Honor now, Violence Unlimited.
Yeah.
It's him, Chris Dickinson, from Fred Yehi, and a couple other guys.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a 10-man tag match coming up at the American New Japan show in about a week or so, too. So that could be interesting. That could get, Black, Imagine Black in Ring of Honor or, New Japan.
And guys like Tommy End and Daniel Bryan, those two specifically said they want ability to work New Japan.
Yeah.
But what was your moment and flop for the last couple of weeks?
My flop was that attempted swerve they tried to do with Balor jumping in front of Cena. And that whole contract signing thing with Bum Corbin. And speaking of which, let's just stop this for a second. How did he lose all of his millions of dollars within like a week? How'd the guy go from being the king to nothing in a week?
He lost his crown.
but you know what I'm saying? He went from like a millionaire to nothing in a week, and all he did was lose a damn crown.
Look like a damn Burger King crown.
Yeah, but now he's like all depressed and washed up, having to try to steal other people's contracts from shit.
I kind of starting to like that storyline a little bit, but I feel like they're going above and beyond what it needs to be.
Yeah. But no, like I said, if Balor had jumped the line in front of Cena and then they just used Cena to somehow put that over, I think that would have been great. Because we haven't really ever gotten a straight up Balor and Roman match.
Yeah, we did.
I'm saying like not like this.
Nah.
That's what I'm
the
talking
last
about.
time they had a match was on Raw to see who was on Wrestle Rollins at SummerSlam for the belt.
Yeah, but I'm talking about like this in a a world title feud. We haven't gotten. That could be a very good match between those two.
Definitely, I think we're going to see it here eventually because they started teasing it on SmackDown.
Yeah, we probably will. Yeah, because the other night on SmackDown, they were still showing that Balor was still wanting that.
I think he's going to get it.
So
I don't see him bringing the Demon King gimmick anytime soon.
If he had a feud with Reigns, it would. I see that happening.
The Demon King versus head of the table.
Yeah, I can see that happening. With the Usos and all that. Getting involved and everything. I could see that coming back out in a major feud like that. Because it used to be that was the only time he ever used the gimmick was when it was for a world title match, or if it was a serious feud and it was the final match, that kind of thing.
Because he used it at SummerSlam that year against Rollins.
Mm-hmm.
And he beat Bray with it in their first match against each other, I believe.
Yep.
I
believe he used it against Samoa Joe in their rematch.
But I don't think he's lost as the Demon King, has he?
No, that's not in WWE, and that's kind of the.
That's what I was trying to remember.
Yeah. But so yes, hopefully we can get that one back.
Yeah, right. What was your moment for this week?
Now for my moment, my moment was Samoa Joe getting his match, his 3-step process to get his match with Cross. I thought that was great how they did that.
That was. I really did. I really liked that.
And first, I've liked him in the enforcer role with Regal.
Yes.
That's perfect for a guy like Joe. He's the perfect guy to do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I like what he did, because Cross, choked him out, and they did they've had the whole back and forth thing. So I like it when he came up and he's like, he just told Regal, said, okay, I got a 3-step process for this. And he has 3 pieces of paper. The first one, was his resignation as Regal's assistant, as his enforcer. So Regal signs that. The people pop for it. The second paper was his reinstatement as an active competitor.
Yep.
So Regal, okay, so he signs that. People lose their shit. Then the third one was a contract. Yeah, it was a contract to face Cross for the title at TakeOver. And they lost their shit even more.
Right? Dude, that was a very good way to do it. It was comical in a sense, but it was a great moment building up to that big pop.
Yeah. But for a guy like Joe, it's not unbelievable. It's not out of the realm of him to be like, okay. It's not out of the realm for Samoa Joe, who's a big badass ass kicker, to say, okay, first I'm resigning from this spot. I want you to put me back here, and then this is what I want.
That was a very believable moment.
Oh yeah, and it was pro wrestling. Yeah.
And I do want to say something too about WWE. They kind of missed earlier, I feel like they lost like how to do long-term booking. Because we were talking about Finn Balor and Cena and Baron Corbin and all that. That could have been a long-term booking thing, you know?
And pro wrestling in general has forgotten how to do long-term booking.
Because they want the immediate pop and the immediate fan reaction.
Right. And and a lot of that is on the fans, though. A lot of it is they don't want to watch two guys in a long feud. They just want to blow off right away.
Yeah, but that's not always the best way to do it, though. And that's what the fans need to realize.
No. So a lot of that goes back to the fan. I'll blame more of that on the fans than I will pro wrestling companies because they don't. Perfect example. Go back to '97 WCW. Or they built up one match between Sting and Hogan for over a year.
Yeah.
From the fall of '96 till Starrcade '97 in December of '97. That's what they did. They built that one match.
Kind of like they did with Cena and Rock that one year, but that was a long-term thing.
Yeah,
but
the WrestleMania match.
Yeah. I'll tell you another thing that's the only other long-term booking that's been kind of started hot and cold that I've seen lately was Hangman and Omega. That's been hot and cold. Like they started for a little bit and it stops. Then they start it again and it stops.
And that's my thing is that either stick with it or don't do it. Because when you start and stop it like that, people lose interest.
And they're teasing it. They keep teasing it, and everybody wants to see it. They're excited for it. But like you said, if they keep doing it for too long, you're going to lose interest.
Yeah.
I mean, Christian and Omega might be all right too, but I would much rather have seen that build-up from Hangman and Omega payoff, and we might get that the next feud,
Right. But, still going back to Samoa Joe, though, that's one of the best pro wrestling things I've seen in a while. And and that should be a great match. There's actually 3 matches on that show that I'm very interested in seeing. So, Joe.
And what other matches was that?
There's Kyle O'Reilly and Adam Cole. They're having their last match, which should be good. And then the fucking rematch of the damn century, Walter and Ilya Dragunov.
I've been hearing a lot about that.
Did you see their first match?
I haven't, no.
Good God. You need to watch that like right now. Like just stop recording and go watch.
Fuck. I'll be back later, guys.
Yeah. Because that, oh my God. And it was no crowd. It was just them and the ref. But holy shit, those guys had a hell of a match. If you'd have turned the screen black and white, nobody would have known the difference.
Damn.
Like they just kicked the living shit out of each other. Even the selling both guys did, Walter made Dragunov look like a tough bastard, and he is, but it's just everything everybody did was.
Well, even with NXT, advertising this match for TakeOver, that's what they're calling it too, is the rematch of the century.
Yeah. Because it kind of came out of nowhere last year.
Yeah.
Like nobody was really expecting it. And then it just, boom, there it was. Here's this 30-minute just instant classic of a match that we haven't had in years.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to the rematch, but before TakeOver, I do want to watch the first match they had with each other.
Yeah, you definitely need to watch that because a lot of people named that match of the year last year. That was.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they just, like I said, it just kind of came out of nowhere. And on top of that, the fact that Walter I think they said he's the longest reigning modern champion. He's over 800 days.
I think so.
As UK Pro wrestling period. The only other person I can think of that might have a longer reign than him is Jacob Fatu, an MLW champion.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of good matches and everything, from the past 2 weeks, what do you think was the best match you saw?
Well, for me, and I've watched everything, and I've seen there hasn't been a whole lot of big matches in the last couple of weeks. But New Japan had their Wrestle Grand Slam show 2 Sundays ago, and that was actually Takagi's first title defense of the IWGP World Title, and he had defended against Tanahashi, Hiroshi Tanahashi.
Yeah.
They had a damn near 40-minute match in the damn Tokyo Dome. And
right.
That was awesome. That was a good back and forth. Wasn't nothing crazy. Wasn't bodies flying all over wasn't people getting blown up and hit with pizza cutters and
oh god,
and going through glass and all that. It was just 2 guys, a well-known veteran in Tanahashi, who's been proven time and time again, and up-and-coming guy who finally got his big win, as world champion. And they went back and forth. Damn, Takagi hit a damn avalanche Death Valley driver on Tanahashi, and Tanahashi went off the top rope. This was the only big flying move in the whole match. Tanahashi did one of his high fly flows off the top rope to the floor.
As I kind of hinted at this earlier, my big best match of this week was the debut of Malachi Black against Cody Rhodes at the homecoming show for AEW. Because that match was hyped up, and it was hyped very well. And we basically saw a 5-minute squash of Cody Rhodes.
Oh yeah.
And then after the match, after they got Cody Rhodes up, Shivani was talking to him, interviewing him. Shivani leaves. Cody Rhodes starts teasing his retirement, begins taking off his boot, takes off one boot.
Yeah.
Then Malachi comes back out, hits him with a crutch.
Yeah.
And he's like, nope, you ain't doing this either.
The only thing that stopped it from being perfect for me was that totally random, unnecessary table spot. There was no rhyme, reason, or anything on it other than Cody wanted to go through a table.
Sometimes sometimes a motherfucker just wants to go through a table. It's part of the business.
But that was his idea. but that was his idea. To be like, well, what do you think if I went through a table and then you finish me?
I mean, it worked. Slightly unnecessary. It was just like a random thing in the match, but it didn't hurt it none.
It wasn't needed because they could have gotten to the same conclusion without all the gaga. And I think it would have looked now think about this for a second. Had he not gone through that table and then Black just beat him with the kick 1, 2, 3, would have been a lot more impressive than him going through a table then getting kicked.
Same message still got across though. That table spot for me, that table spot for me, it wasn't like a oh my god moment. It was just kind of like a thing, just an added piece of the match.
For me, it was like, really, y'all just can't help yourselves, can you? You just gotta break a table.
Hey, sometimes that's what you got to do. I mean, but overall, it was still I thought, like what I said, it was the best match of the week.
No, like I said, I had no problem with how they finished it, how they did that. Is just
that random table
spot in there. Yeah, I think it would have been much better because it just almost makes it look like, okay, he had to go through the table first, but if he hadn't gone through the table, that match would have been different,
Maybe.
But to me, that's what it makes it look like.
Yeah, definitely.
Instead of just they do the little quick exchanges they had, and then boom, Black hits his kick 1, 2, 3.
Match is over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're getting at. I do see that. Like I said, it was random. It was very random.
It was, and right, and that's the thing. That's my thing. Is it just out of nowhere?
Yeah.
You know.
Like the table wasn't set up randomly or nothing. It was just kicked him, threw him off the top turnbuckle into the table. I mean,
right.
But his entrance though was badass though.
Oh yeah, no. I liked the entrance. I liked the mask and the gear.
I did
and everything.
too.
I liked the music that he picked for and everything. I thought all that was great. Just that was
that one spot.
Yeah. No, I thought it all worked. His entrance, his demeanor, everything like that. I thought that all worked.
Mm-hmm. And he's still selling that eye injury from Seth Rollins.
Yeah. He still has the eye makeup and.
Yeah. But now it's a segment of the show. It's like I said, it's always been my favorite part. Mm-hmm. Me and Nick will pick out one match and have the links posted up. We'll tell you a little bit of background on the match for everybody to see. And like I said, after the show's posted, the links will be posted up for these two matches.
Yeah.
And Nick, I'm actually going to let you go first on this one because you have an interesting pick.
Well, I was going to have a SummerSlam pick because that's kind of been something we've been doing lately. Is if there's been any kind of big events coming up,
we'll pick a match from that event,
from that history. Yeah, and I actually was going to go with a ladder match that The Rock and Triple H had. I think it was SummerSlam '98 for the Intercontinental title, which was actually the best match on that show, but due to recent events, I had to go back and pick this match, and it's from the 1987 Great American Bash Tour, and it's the Midnight Express versus the Rock and Roll Express.
All right, tell me a little bit about that match.
I mean, if you want to see tag team run at its peak, at its pinnacle, at any other adjective you can think for that, that's a match you need to watch. First of all, Bobby Eaton and Ricky Morton are damn near perfect pro wrestlers. Those two are just fantastic. So you got one guy on each team that's just absolutely incredible, but that's not taking anything away from Stan Lane and Robert Gibson because they were great also.
Yeah.
But just everything about the match, Jim Cornette, it's the Midnight Express's manager, so he adds his, the heel manager, he adds that whole element to it. He's trying to help them cheat to win, that kind of thing, that's a lost art too.
Yeah.
Managers don't do that anymore. But if you just, like I said, just the psychology, the in-ring action, just everything about it, you just watch any kind of match between these two, and you're just in for a treat for just tag team wrestling and pro wrestling in general. Honestly, any match between them is great, but I picked this one because it was one of the first ones.
Yeah.
So,
who ended up winning that one again?
I believe the Rock and Rolls won that one.
Rock and Roll Express won that one.
I believe the Rock and Rolls did win that one, yeah. Because that was the tour, so they faced each other a lot.
Oh, okay.
The one that I picked was from, I believe it was July 15th from that tour.
All right.
But now when I post the link up, like I said, I believe that was the first or second one they had. But that was a match they carried around the whole summer pretty much. So.
Jeez. Well, my pick was from a SummerSlam event. I kept the tradition alive, kind of like an unwritten thing that we somehow just started doing. Yeah. But mine was actually from 10 years ago. It's hard to believe it's been that long ago now.
Yeah, this one was one of WWE's only 5-star matches, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. And it was, when CM Punk won the WWE title at Money in the Bank, he left. He was gone. Mm-hmm. Yep. He went on his hiatus. So they had a tournament on Raw, and the last match of that tournament was Cena versus Rey Mysterio.
Yeah. Yep.
Cena ended up winning. So then at the end of that tournament, they crowned Cena as the champion.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, you hear that cult personality calling, out comes CM Punk with the belt.
Yeah.
And then they're having a stare down and try who the real champion is.
Mm-hmm.
So they have this match at SummerSlam, and Triple H was the referee, I believe.
Yeah.
And they had this match. I think it was CM Punk ended up winning the match. Yeah, because Cena's foot was under the rope, and then he was like, Triple H didn't see that at all.
Yeah, yeah.
But just the build up for that match, that was one of the best builds from WWE that I've seen during that time frame.
Well, and that was that whole, what was it, that the summer of Punk?
Yeah.
Is that what they called that period? Yeah.
Yeah, that's when Punk was just at the highest point in his career.
Oh, definitely. He never before or since really has been at that peak like he was then.
That was the highest peak of his career.
Mm-hmm.
Then we know how it ended when The Rock killed it.
Yeah, unfortunately, but he had a good run because he actually had the longest title reign of that period, didn't he?
Yeah, 434 days.
Yeah.
But that was our picks for classic matches this week. Again, Nick, he picked the Midnight Express versus the Rock and Roll Express from the Great American Bash Tour in 1987. And I had John Cena versus CM Punk to become undisputed WWE champion from SummerSlam 2011.
Yep.
And again, the links for these matches, they will be posted on all of our social media pages. And if you're not following us yet, please go hit that like, that subscribe, follow us on Twitter, YouTube, we're on Instagram, Facebook, we got it all.
Facebook.
Insta Twitter.
Insta Twitter.
Insta book, whatever you want to call it now. It's all there. It's all there.
The Facegram.
Yeah, right.
Facegram and the Insta books and all that.
The Googlegram.
Yeah, all that. The Googles and everything else.
Oh, God. But anyways, guys, we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. And I believe in 2 weeks will be SummerSlam, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 weeks will be SummerSlam because I think they're doing it on a Saturday this year.
The 21st is SummerSlam. The 22nd is TakeOver 36.
Oh, really?
Yep. SummerSlam's on the Saturday. TakeOver's on Sunday. All the same weekend.
August 21st. That's next weekend.
It's a weekend after. It's 2 weeks.
No, next. Yeah.
Today.
Yeah. I'm looking at it differently. 1 week from this Saturday.
Damn it, Marcus.
1 week from this Saturday.
The coming Saturday.
but we might.
No, we're going to get.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say we're going to get these matches posted up and everything, and I'm actually going to find that Walter and Dragunov match.
Yes.
We'll put that up there too. That because anybody that hasn't seen that first one, you need to go watch it because that is what pro wrestling could be in the modern day. And holy shit.
That'll wrap up this week's episode. We will see y'all in 2 weeks.
And hopefully we have no more crazy wrestler deaths in between that time because we've had a lot lately.
Yeah. Hopefully no more deaths or releases.
Yeah, that seems to be the trend right now. They either die or get fired.
Yeah. They either get released from WWE or get released from life. One of the two.
Yeah. You're either doing the job to the company or you're doing the job to life.
But anyways, guys, again, that's all wrap this up. Try to enjoy pro wrestling for what it is, and we'll see y'all in 2 weeks.
Yes, sir. We'll be back with you more.